Our customers have problems that ideally would be great if they could be solved, but that doesn't mean it's the number one, two, or three thing that they're focused on. So that's one disconnect. And salespeople are often bewildered. We're like, oh my gosh, I could help 3x this person's money. Why aren't they getting back to me? It's because there's a difference between importance and priority.
From the team at Sales Loop, it's How to Sell More. I'm your host, Mark Drager, and each week I bring you fresh new ideas and strategies to help you tackle the biggest challenge and take advantage of the biggest opportunity every company faces, and that's figuring out how to sell more. So whether you're a business owner or a marketing professional, I am going to help you succeed in sales and in marketing, even if it doesn't come natural to you. Now, today we are talking about a harsh truth that exists in many sales teams, in many marketing teams. If you're in sales, if you're in marketing yourself, even as a business owner, maybe you are falling victim to this. Maybe you fall in the same trap. And that is the fact that we are spending a lot of time on leads that will not convert because we are using tactics that would never work on ourselves. We are asking our sales team, and we are working through sales and marketing strategies and tactics that if we were the buyer, we would never put up with, and they would never get through to us. And frankly, in a world where people love to buy, but they hate talking to salespeople, this is a huge issue. Now, the person who really highlighted this for me and really brought this challenge into the spotlight is today's guest, the author, the speaker, the man with 20 plus years of sales experience, David Priemer. And what he does is he helps break down in this talk how we can align how we sell with how people actually make purchasing decisions. Now, a few quick highlights about David in his career before we get into the conversation. He started his career as a research scientist, in fact, and only landed in sales quite by accident. But I guess it's a good thing that accident happened because it led to a 20 plus year career that spanned 4 successful startups, 5 amazing years at Salesforce, where he ultimately led the commercial sales division as vice president, where he got the opportunity to create Salesforce's Sales Leadership Academy. And through this experience, as well as his passion to teach and to help share and to help evangelize the art and science of modern selling techniques, it's led to some pretty cool opportunities, including being published in Harvard Business Review, in Forbes, in Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine, as well as publishing and releasing best-selling books, including Sell the Way You Buy, which is what we're going to speak about today, and we cover in great detail, and his latest book, The Sales Leader They Need. Now, this is a little unconventional in the opening for an episode for me to kind of go into this detail, but let me just take a step back and share a story with you. So when I got the opportunity to connect with David on the podcast, of course, I went out and I got his books. I read Sell the Way That You Buy, and then having the chance to have this talk with him, which is what you're about to hear, having the chance to have this talk with him, the book and the talk immediately changed the way that I approach sales within Sales Loop. And because we're a brand strategy company and we help others figure out how to sell and how to position themselves and all of these things, it immediately changed some of our work with our clients. And so I can't think of the last time that in the matter of a few weeks, we had this conversation a few weeks ago, but I can't remember having a conversation that so quickly impacted not only my own sales strategies, but also my clients. And so if this is something that frankly, I needed to hear, and if this was a conversation that frankly, my clients benefited from, I can't wait to share this with you. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So with all that said, I am extremely excited to share with you the conversation that I had with David Priemer. So David, as the former VP of Salesforce, you really were at ground zero for modern sales tactics and strategies. And yet, despite all of that, despite all of your experience and all of the strategies that you have, you noticed something really fascinating, that the very techniques you were asking your sales team to use wouldn't have worked on you. And this, of course, this epiphany led to you writing the book, Sell the Way That You Buy, which we're going to talk about in today's talk. But when I saw that title, Sell the Way You Buy, at first glance, I thought that is counterintuitive because I was thinking everyone has different buying preferences and different values. And so I'm curious, what led you to this realization that things need to fundamentally change and we have to rethink how we sell? And second, what do you really mean when you talk about sell the way that you buy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's two things I think about when I hear sell the way you buy. The first element is kind of what you said at the beginning, which is this empathetic component. And I had this epiphany. So I'm a startup guy. I've done 4 startups, and my third startup was acquired by Salesforce. So I came over with the ship to this big company, Salesforce. And I was there for 5 awesome years. And I used to run small business sales for the Eastern US for Salesforce. And I found that a lot of the tactics in this big sales machine that my sales reps were going out and using were not unethical, and they were not categorically ineffective, but they were just things that were not working on me, let's say, when other salespeople were trying to sell me stuff, because I'm like a VP at Salesforce and I'm ground zero for prospecting. So I just found that these tactics just wouldn't work on me. And so these are like there's an empathetic component. But I'd say like the bigger element of it is being really curious about the pathways and mechanisms by which human beings make purchasing decisions. So it doesn't matter, Mark, if this is what you do or someone else does. As human beings, we're all wired pretty much the same way. And so if we understand the pathways by which human beings make decisions of any kind, then we can align our sales motion thusly. So there's this element of, yes, there's this empathetic piece, but there's also just this thing that we all do when we buy things that we can align our sales motion with to be able to convert customers in a much more efficient and authentic and frankly human way. So that's what it's all about.
And so in the opening of your book, you share this moment of realization that as a busy executive, every single person's trying to get you on the phone. Every person's trying to get you on LinkedIn. Every person's trying to email you. They're trying to get a moment of your time. Everyone's trying to sell to you. And when your head is down, like many of our listeners are, when you're busy, when you're focused, the last thing you want to do is be distracted. Can you share a little bit more and flesh out, I guess, this moment of realization that, the very thing I'm asking my team to do is the very thing that would not work on me?
Yeah, like we talk a lot about, just, reach out and say, hey, look, there's never been a better time to buy. And like we have this solution and like, it's going to help reduce costs and improve efficiency. This is what we're kind of wired to say. We talk about oftentimes in business, especially, we talk about the business case. We talk about like the return on investment. Like I'm asking you for money, but hey, don't you worry because you're going to make more money than this or save more money than this, that what you're paying me. Of course, like why wouldn't you want to do it? But there's a couple things we run into. Number one is just because something is important doesn't mean it's a priority. So oftentimes as salespeople, we think like, why wouldn't someone spend this money with me? If I could, 2x, 3x, 10x your money, wouldn't that make sense? But it's kind of like saying, hey, Mark, is your health and the health of your family the most important thing to you? What would you say?
I don't know how I would respond to that, because if I responded yes, which it is, I would feel like you're leading me somewhere, and I'm not quite sure what you're trying to trick me into.
Yeah. I love that you're going. I was not trying to trick you, but I love that you're going down this road. No, I love that you're going down this road because, so here's we'll kind of skip to the end a little bit, is that in sales, we tell our reps to go out there and like, go ask Mark what his budget is. What's the timing? And like, who's going to sign this thing? I say, like, Mark, who's your boss? What does the approval process look like? I ask you, I said, tell my reps, go out and like, get all this information. And just because as a sales rep, you want things, you want information, well, guess what? You're the enemy. So no one wants to tell you anything, right? Just because you ask nicely doesn't mean someone's going to. Imagine you go into a car dealership and the car salesperson says, hey, Mark, what's your budget for cars? Exactly what you said is now is this a trap? Like if I say that this thing are they going to try to trap me this way and that way? And so there's a huge disconnect in the sales world where we just go out and we execute things and we don't think about what's going on in the mind of our customer. I often refer to this as the science of self-disclosure. And I talk about this in the book and my content, the science of self-disclosure. Like everyone has secrets that they don't want to talk about. How do you get the customers to like open up and tell you things that they don't want to talk about? It's kind of get to the end part. But the question about, is your health and the health of your family the most important thing is not a trick question because most people would say yes, which it is, right? But does that mean that if I followed you around for a week and I wrote down everything that you ate and where you spent your time and how much exercise you got and how much sleep and all the things that would be consistent with the fact that your health and the health of your family is the most important thing, what I see, your actions are consistent with those beliefs and statements and importance that you place on it. And we know what the answer to that question is, right?
The answer is that Halloween was just a little bit ago. And if you followed me around last night, you would see that I was secretly taking the dad tax. Oh, you see, listeners, he's holding up chocolate.
If you're not watching this on video, I have a box of Halloween candy. I have, for whatever reason, beside my desk here.
I call
And
it the dad
so
tax, but yeah.
that's it. So what you're saying is, okay, something is important, but it doesn't mean you have a sense of urgency to solve that problem. So yes, our customers have problems that ideally would be great if they could be solved, but that doesn't mean it's the number one, two, or three thing they're focused on. So that's one disconnect. And salespeople are often bewildered. We're like, oh my gosh, I could help 3x this person's money. Why aren't they getting back to me? It's because there's a difference between importance and priority. Now, if I told you back to the health situation, if I said, hey, look, God forbid, Mark, if you don't get on the treadmill, I did your medical workup. If you don't get on the treadmill in the next few months, you're going to have a heart attack. All of a sudden, what was important now becomes a priority. So there's different ways that we can help establish priority, help unlock that sense of urgency, but it requires us to really dive down into the science of how people, act and behave as it relates to their purchasing decisions. The other piece, though, relates to this concept I refer to as like the binary paradox of ROI, or like the value versus ROI. And it goes like this. You ever hear the phrase like no one ever got fired for buying what?
IBM.
IBM, right back in the day. And so and let's unpack that for a second. Like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that IBM has the best products or services? Like, Mark, what do you think that means? No one ever got fired for buying IBM.
Here's what we know, listeners. Status matters, right? And so people do not mind making bad decisions. They mind making bad decisions in front of others so they look foolish. And so there is this social capital that comes down. And so if nobody gets fired from buying from IBM, is it worth the risk benefit to my career, my reputation, and my name to try the slightly better solution that comes with risks attached to it, or to frankly just buy from all of the social proof shows me that this is a smart decision that everyone else is making. Why would I risk anything when I could just go with IBM? Mm-hmm. And if it's B2B, it's not even my budget or money. It's someone else's money.
It's an abstract concept. That's right. It's funny. We used to say in small business at Salesforce that our clients had a relationship with their money. Like if they spent money on us, it meant that their family couldn't go on vacation that year. They were very intimate. But in a lot of businesses, money is like a number on a spreadsheet that's like abstract, to us. But you're 100% right. And you're thinking around this, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. It means that I value my job and like not being fired or being thought of as out of the norm. And I'm willing to pay more money for that kind of solution, right? Because what do I value? I value like the feeling of security and safety and consistency rather than, trying to be too innovative what I'm doing. And it's funny there, not to digress too much on this, there's a really great story. There's a fellow by the name of Rory Sutherland, and he's like this older British guy. He's like an ad exec, and he's brilliant. I love all of his content. He's done TED Talks and so on. And he tells these stories often. He says like there was a flight that British Airways in London said, hey, you know what? We noticed there's a lot of business people going from London to New York City to do business. They find it's a massive pain in the ass to go to London Heathrow Airport, to fly all the way to JFK. And so you know what we're going to do? We're going to put on this business class only flight from London City Airport to JFK. So it's like easier to get to. It's all business class. It'll be great. And what do they find? The headline was, not a lot of people book this flight. And they're bewildered. Like, why would no one book this flight? Like it ticks all the boxes. And what they found was that the people that were actually booking the flights were the assistants of these business people. And what happened was they said, look, if I put my boss on a flight from London Heathrow to JFK and something happens with the flight, like it gets delayed or whatever, my boss is going to blame British Airways because that's the default route that I would take. But if I book my boss on this cockeyed flight from London City Airport and like something gets screwed up, they're going to blame me, right? So I'm just going to stick with like tried and true option because I value like my personal brand and reputation. Let's get back to value versus ROI. The idea is that people don't buy the business case. They buy the feeling that comes with the business case. And we know this because even when in business, we put together business cases for clients and we say, look, you spend $1 million with me and you're going to make $2 million. The only thing that matters is whether you believe that what I said is going to happen is going to happen. And if you don't believe it, then you're not going to buy in. And belief is not an objective statistic. It's a feeling. Either you believe or you don't believe, right? And so this is back to sell the way you buy. This is a thing that, as sellers, we think, oh, we put together a business case, we just ask these questions and boom, like sales happen. But the reality is human beings are complex, they're messy, and they're biased much towards feelings than they are towards logic and reason. And so this is when I talk about like selling along these pathways, whether it's discovery, getting customers to open up, your messaging, how you handle objections. All of it flows along these emotional pathways. So if we can sell along those pathways, then we'll be in better shape. So that's where sell the way you buy comes from.
This is really interesting. And I think we could explore this a little bit more, because I've noticed that as soon as someone moves into a business context as salespeople, as marketers, advertisers, business development, an owner, product developer, whatever aspect of business you're in, I believe that people somehow feel that you leave your personality and your emotion at the door. I recall, a bunch of years ago, we were working with a company that sold a Spanx alternative to women and it was focused on the idea that, you would somehow be able to reduce fat, reduce weight by wearing this product. And the whole thing that the business owner came to us with was all of the scientific proof. But the thing is, I've been with my wife now for almost 25 years. And I've learned by just watching women in my life that some days they go, "Oh, I look terrible." I go, you look great. What are you talking about? And other days, "I look amazing." And I'm like thinking, you look exactly the same as yesterday. Yesterday, you thought you looked bad. Today, you look great. And I'm trying to figure this out. And it hit me that the objective truth doesn't really matter. It is feeling, it is experience, it is emotion. It doesn't matter how you look. It matters how you feel how you look. It doesn't matter whatever aspect you're in. But in B2B or in business, as you mentioned with business cases, we somehow think that people stop becoming people as soon as we move into a business context. And we rely on logic, we rely on reason, we rely on all of these things, and we overlook emotion. Is that, in your experience, because it's harder, it's more abstract, it leaves much more to chance, it requires us to take larger risks that maybe internal stakeholders might not be comfortable with? Why do we assume that as soon as we're having a business conversation, people stop being people?
Yeah, well, I think so. It's a great question. I think number one is, it's just easier to train. It's easier to train people. Like, here's the spreadsheet, here's the logic and reason. Like, it's just easier to train people on that. It's the same reason why when we talk about our products and services, it's a lot easier to train someone on like the features and functions and the technical, rather than like the emotional, element of it. Although you do see this in society, you see all of these great brands, Nike, Apple, that sell the feeling rather than in B2B sales. Like, we think, oh, we need to be like buttoned up, and this is how people work in B2B sales. And it's not that, again, it's categorically incorrect, but also like times have changed. You want to go out and you want to buy like a cell phone. All right, like how many cell phones? I don't know. There's like Apple or Android. Like, there's not that many choices. You want to go hire a sales trainer. There's like a million sales trainers, all around. There's like a million people that do what everyone does. Even in the marketing technology space, we were chatting about marketing. In 2011, there were 150 vendors in the marketing technology space. In 2024, there's over 14,000 marketing technologies, which is like a 42% compound annual growth over that time period. And so if you're one of those vendors and you're trying to explain to a customer like why you're this unique snowflake, like, you're going to lose. Because people also, while there are now more solutions, people have much less discretionary mental bandwidth than they used to have. We're just now consumed with all sorts of stimulus, right? So it's actually a lot harder to break through. Add to that the fact now that the average age and experience level of a seller that joins your company is far less than what it was 10 years ago. So now we're telling these like younger, less experienced sellers that exist in a sea of sameness to go call on, in many cases, grown-ups and talk about the future of whatever. And they struggle to manifest the confidence and conviction and kind of the emotion that's needed to break through. So back to your question of like, why is it so? There's a lot of changes that have happened in the market, but I think just in general, it's just easier to gravitate towards those features, functions, and returns on investment as an easier way to kind of train and communicate, even though that's not how, we buy.
And so what is the solution, from your perspective, what is the solution to some of these challenges we're laying out? Because as I hear you talking, I think I would rather not have the overhead, even if it's a 100% commissioned role, I'd rather not have the overhead of managing someone who is not going to be successful because they're not capable of selling on an emotional or story-based level or a consultative level or what have you. If all they're going to do is features and benefits and that is not going to work, I'd rather not have someone in the role. Mm-hmm. Very hard to scale, very hard to manage, very hard to find people. So what is the solution to some of the things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I still think there's this element of enablement. Like you can take a young, less experienced person. Because think about this. If I took a person and I said, what's one thing that you're just passionate about? Okay. Go out and sell that to someone. Like you could do it. If you love this kind of music or sport or whatever it is, like you could do it. But then I say, okay, sell this functional technical solution. And all of a sudden, you break down. And so the question is like, how can we put the thing that we're selling on the same like emotional plane as this thing that you could manifest this, authentic conviction around in your ordinary personal life? I do this all the time. For example, I ask someone, let's say I said, like, what's something that you are not passionate about? And you said,
Taxes.
I don't know, taxes? Is that what you said? and I said, okay, you're not passionate about taxes. So if I said, tell me about,
I'm not
like,
passionate about paying taxes.
Paying taxes.
I can be passionate about not paying taxes.
Well, even if it was something, let's say like the tax code or tax laws, you think about that and your head spins. But like, let's start from the first part. Let's say you weren't passionate about it, and I said, so tell me about, Mark, why you're so passionate about the tax code. And you would like struggle and you'd be like, well, the tax code, it's really important and there's lots of rules. And you would just start describing. It's like if you didn't like to ski and I said, tell me why skiing is so great. And you're like, oh, well, there's the mountain, there's the skis, there's the beautiful weather, right? Versus if you love to ski or you love baseball.
Versus the sunlight hitting that type of snow that's just like lightly blowing on the side of a mountain. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, like, I don't know if you ski or not. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like this, that crispness.
Well, you could describe the crispness. You could also say, well, my gosh, you know what? Growing up, we skied as a family. This was our default thing. We were all busy during the week. My dad traveled a lot. My mom didn't do too much, but we loved to get away. And during the winters, it was like every weekend, like clockwork. Every time just stopped. We'd spend time as a family. And you're telling me this story that like it almost transcends skiing. There's all this emotion behind it. Oh, why do you love baseball? Like my dad used to take me when I was a little kid. We used to do this and that. Like you would tell the story with emotion. And so I'm not saying that now plunk yourself in the B2B world and you're selling advertising or sheet metal or consulting, whatever it is, right? The question is, how do I manifest the same level of emotion around these things that I do around something I'm just naturally passionate about if this is not my core expertise? And there are things that you can do. Like I teach this in my curriculum and in my book. Like, how do you manifest this kind of authentic conviction? It's almost like a translation function. Now, I'll tell you, people love to, again, talk about their products and services like on a detailed level. And it was really interesting. And this, I know, full disclosure, I work with a lot of high growth tech companies, software companies, big software companies, and small ones as well. That's kind of my thing. And the reality is in these spaces, like no one really needs technology, right? But the technology evolves very, very quickly. And so what happens is salespeople go out and they say, oh, we have version 3.0 is coming out and it'll knock your socks off and you'll never believe what it can do. And companies actually train their reps and they say, hey, look, if our reps know how these features and functions work, they're going to be able to go out and sell this thing. But the reality is, because I work with these companies all the time, they go out, they sell, they say this stuff, and customers just ignore them. They're stuck in a sea of sameness. No one has any tolerance to hear all of these like little details. Now, it was interesting. I was speaking at a sales kickoff event a couple weeks ago, and the CEO gets on stage. This is like a 5,000 employee company, like $1 billion software company. He says, you know what? I want to encourage all you salespeople, try really hard this year. I want to see you at President's Club, like on the beach. And he said to everyone, look, we have a lot of new products and services coming out this year. And I'll tell you, the people that I see at President's Club on the beach every year are the ones that really know these products and services inside and out. So I would encourage you to do that, right? Now, this is like a couple hours before my keynote. So then I get up on stage and I'm like, hey, look, I want to pretend his name was Mark. I'm like, I want to make a slight modification to what Mark said. I do believe that what he's saying is true. The reps that know the products inside and out are the ones that show up on the beach in President's Club having hit their quota. But I don't believe it's because they know the products and services and they communicate that to the customers is why they are so successful. It's the knowledge of the products and services and the details is what allows them to manifest authentic conviction when they connect with their customers. They don't even have to talk about the products and the nuts and bolts and features and functions, but the customers believe them and they trust them and they feel comfortable with them. And those reps are able to create an amazing, relaxed, authentic human buying experience. And that's why they're so successful, right? So yes, having that confidence and conviction. It's funny, I actually saw this firsthand at Salesforce. Like the quick story of it was, I was at a leadership offsite and we were at this restaurant at this golf course. And the waiter came around and he took everyone's orders. There was maybe about 8 of us or so. And it was a nice menu, not that, maybe like 8 items on the menu or so. And he comes to me last. And I'm one of these people, when I order in a restaurant, I don't just want to say, oh, I'll take this, because like maybe that sucks, or maybe that's not the thing that people like, but it looks good. You've all had that experience on a menu. You order something and you think it looks good and then it sucks. So I said to the server, and at this point, everyone else had ordered and everyone ordered something different. And they get to me and I say, do you mind if I ask you, this tenderloin dish on the menu, it looks pretty good, but like, how is it? And he puts down his pad and he looks at me all serious. And he says, oh, sir, it's the best thing on the menu. And he starts going into the detail about the maple syrup reduction and parsnip mash. I'm like, I'm having this. And you know what happened? 6 out of the other 7 people changed their order to that. Now, here's the thing. Was it good? Yeah, it was good. Was it the best thing on the menu? I don't know. Maybe the server was lying. Maybe they had the surplus of that in the kitchen. The chef said, sell this thing. Or maybe it was really expensive and he liked the fact that he'd get a bigger tip. I don't know, right? But in that moment, he had a lot of conviction around that this was the best thing on the menu. I'm like, and he managed to convert most of us at the table, sales leaders. So I said, this means something. And I went back to my Salesforce, like my CRM, and I said, show me a report of all of my reps. So I had 70 sales reps. I said, show me a report of all my reps and who's generated the most sales pipeline this year to date so far. And I found that the reps at the top of the list all had this same thing in common that I just described. Yes, some of them were tenured. Yes, some of them had deep product knowledge. But the ones at the top of the list all had that authentic conviction. They were willing to make strong recommendations, lead their customers, right? They transcended their narrative beyond features and functions. And to be honest, that is what today the best salespeople still do. So if you want to be successful in today's market where you're stuck in a sea of sameness, there's a million solutions all sound the same, people's attention spans are razor thin. If you lead with that authentic human conviction, you'll win more. That's it. It's proven by science, it's proven by data, it's proven by experience.
Hey there, it's Mark. We will get right back to my talk with David. But first, I just wanted to take a quick moment and share with you how we may help you grow your business. So at Sales Loop, my award-winning B2B branding and marketing agency, we partner with leaders like you, people who are ready to take their business to the next level. Now, the team and I, we build out bold brands, we help with go-to-market strategies, we help figure out how to recruit stronger talent, and really, we create these strategic brands to help share your story, to set you apart from the competition, to drive more sales, and a whole bunch of other business problems that we attack. Now, as a listener of this podcast, I know that you know that we are pretty darn focused on helping businesses stand out, on helping them sell more, on helping them understand their customers and their target audiences and their messaging and all of that stuff. And frankly, I might just be able to bring all of that strategy and all of that creative and all of those sales techniques to your business as well. So if you have any questions about this, working with us, or about any of our strategies at all, I'd love to connect with you. You can find me over on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out anytime. And if you'd like to learn more about the work that I do day to day with my agency, you can go over to salesloopbrand.com. So with that, let's get back to the show. Let me run something by you. Part of what I value at our agency and part of what makes up our approach are 2 things. One, I always tell my team and I always remind myself that we have to own the outcome. It's our responsibility to own the client's outcome. And that's not a sale. That's the actual value for money exchange and the outcome. And then second, I have to do right by these people. This is not necessarily just a big company. This is my contact or client's career. It's their reputation. If it's their business, it's their dollars. I loved what you said about small business at Salesforce, was the realization that these are dollars that you are pulling out of personal income. Mm-hmm. And so I always think, okay, in my opinion, most companies are not willing to do what it takes to take on the responsibility on the outcome. They would rather be a little more hands-off, tip their toe in the water, not make a firm recommendation, not own it if something goes wrong or any of that stuff. And I think that subtle shift makes or breaks this conviction you're speaking about. And then I remind myself, again, as we go through sales, but also as we go through delivery, like I need to do right by these people. It is our responsibility to do right by them. Do you think those two types of value sets, or even the way that I've positioned it, do you think that that is something that can help train others, lead others to this conviction? Are we saying the same thing, do you think? Is this just my interpretation of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've hired lots of contractors in my business too. And I find myself, regardless of whether the service they provide ultimately leads to success, which of course you want it to. One thing I find myself saying to the contractors that I would go back to again, or even refer, is that I really love that you care about my business. Like whether your solution works or not, I believe that you care about me and my business and want me to be successful. And as a startup guy working in the software trenches where you have a solution that may not be always 100% there, especially in the early days, and you attract these like-minded customers, those customers who believe what you believe and who you deliver this amazing experience for and this caring for will give you more chances to fail because you care. And so in a way, what you're describing is 100% true, and it's almost like it's like a cheat code almost. It's like the way Simon Sinek, when people know Simon Sinek and he's a great speaker, and when people ask him like, how are you such a great speaker? Like, what do you do? And he says, I cheat. I only speak about things that I know a lot about, and I only speak about things that I'm passionate about. And people can tell. And it's funny when you look at someone like Elon Musk, for example, whatever you think of Elon Musk, and I'm going to pull a Ricky Bobby and say, with all due respect, he's a horrible speaker. Like he's not well practiced. He stumbles through his words. Like he's kind of riffing it. But I believe that he believes what he's saying. He is 100% authentic. I don't think he's lying. I think he 110% believes in what he's saying. And you can tell by the way he runs his businesses and where he places his investments that he believes in this. And I say, make no mistake, whatever you think of him, he's created the most valuable car company, for example, in the world. And the funny thing is, the value of that car company on the stock market changes based on what people think about him. Like he starts with all his ridiculous shenanigans, and all of a sudden, Tesla stock drops, He starts making a big move and Tesla stock increases. Like, I can't name the CEO of any other car company in the world. Never mind, prognosticate how the stock market's going to go up and down based on that person's personality. But Elon Musk is able to command that because he's so authentic in this way. And so I say the same thing with Simon Sinek, and I say the same thing with you. When you care about the results that your customers receive and get, and they feel that, that's what they're buying. They're invested in that. And I've hired contractors that I've given second, third, fourth chances to, probably more than I should have, because I believe that they cared about me and my business and the outcome, regardless of whether they achieved it. And this is real. This is where people are spending their money. So 100%.
I am not a fan of Elon Musk, but I will learn from anyone. And I was watching, I don't know if it was CNBC, I don't know what the clip was on YouTube, but I got a clip of him talking about the opportunity with robotaxis and how the fact that the entire robotaxi play is going to move margins from, 20 cents on the dollar to 70 cents, that it's not an auto play, it's actually a software play, and that it's going to blow all consumer sales, retail sales out of the water. And no matter what has happened before, things are about to change in extremely dramatic ways. And by the end of this 45-second clip, I was watching it going, I went from cynical and skeptical to, I don't really know how to validate what he's saying, to, oh man, this is how this guy gets people to fund and back this stuff. Like by the end, it was like this little clip, this little master clip of, surely if he didn't believe it, no one's going to buy into it. No one's going to give him hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in financing, like his belief in it, whether I could validate it or not, I felt. And I was thinking, I need to figure out how to do that kind of stuff better.
You know what? When you read Sell the Way You Buy, in chapter 5, I talk about this. So I call it like messaging conviction and leading with what you believe. And I actually call it a belief statement. So it's instead of talking about your product or service or company in terms of like what you do, start your narrative with, well, at our company, we believe that. And then kind of go down that road. For example, if you didn't even know what I did, and I say like your product or service should be nowhere near this narrative, right? But if I said, you know what, look, Mark, I believe sales is the best profession in the world when done the right way. And I believe that while there are a lot of bad salespeople out there, I also believe they're not bad people. They're good people going out and using these bad dated tactics. And I believe if you want to be successful in the market of the future, you have to use sales tactics that are rooted in science, executed with empathy and conviction. That's what I believe. Now, nowhere in that narrative did I say anything about my company, what my products or services are. But if you're out there and you're listening to this or reading it and you say, you know what? Yeah, he's making sense. I believe what you believe. Now, all of a sudden, you're leaning in and you're interested to hear what I have to say. This is like Mark Benioff in the Salesforce mobile days saying, hey, look, Mark, we at Salesforce, we believe as a busy entrepreneur, you should be able to run your business from your phone. Why would you want to go and sit in front of a computer all day? You're on the move. We believe you should be able to run your business from your phone. There's no product there. There's no service. It's a belief statement. And people, like Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And so when you lead with what you believe, it's very powerful. In fact, I've had clients, like literally in the last couple of weeks, who said, David, this training has been fantastic. I said, so we've even closed business as a result of these tactics. I said, give me what's one tactic that you use that you were able to close business from? And this belief statement keeps coming up. I've been doing this for years, but like they say, it not only did the belief statement allow us to align with the emotional value system of our customers, but our reps were able to use it with a lot more conviction because now we're not talking about products or services. We're talking about feelings. And as humans, it's much easier to talk about feelings than anything else. So anyways, this belief statement, as we're talking about here, is very powerful when it comes to converting customers.
I have two more questions, and I appreciate, I think we're bumping up against the clock, but listeners, if you'll stick with us, two questions. It just popped out of my head.
Take your time.
Salespeople and entrepreneurs are often perceived as being overly optimistic and willing to say whatever they need to say to get a sale. And that has not been my experience. My experience is, in fact, that most people in a position for business development or sales tends to, again, be afraid to make bold claims, be afraid to really put themselves out there. They would rather play it safe, and then they fall into the sea and sameness because they are doing what everyone else is doing. In your experience, where do people tend to fall, and should we be injecting more hope and more optimism into our messages, or is there a very real risk of overselling?
Yeah, in my experience, it's definitely more the latter. People get stuck in like the functional tech, especially in my world, but the functional technical, the details of what it is, and not on the emotional state of the customer. It's also different now, like saying whatever you need to say to get the sale. The reality is like that work, I'm going back to my Dan Pink, and he talks about this in To Sell as Human, which I love. He says back in the day, there was this system of information asymmetry, meaning when you went to go buy a car, for example, you didn't know if the car was great or a piece of crap. The salesperson knew, but there was no way for you to really find out about that car. And nowadays, you could just Google everything and there's all these reviews. So there's a lot more transparency. There's that information parity now. It's not like you can oversell something. If I go on Amazon or Expedia and I see a thing that's rated a 3.8 out of 5, it's going to be very difficult for you to tell me that this is really, a mind-blowing thing that's going to change my life. So definitely I see the problem being more on talking about like the functional technical and like kind of the lower level, like what it is, versus it's not overselling to speak about something with emotion. But yeah, I don't see a lot of people just saying whatever they need to win a deal these days, I would say.
The real push for us is to make those bolder claims, be able to lead with conviction, lead with empathy, tie things back to the real pain points of the business, paint a picture, paint a picture of what the future may look like, implementing your solutions or using your solutions, just getting a lot more personal and emotional. Is that fair?
If you wrap everything up, I talk about this, like, people don't buy solutions, they buy feelings. And we know this from science. We know this from research. So the idea is, how can we align our sales motion along these emotional pathways? It doesn't mean making false promises. But for example, there was a customer of ours at Salesforce who did a really great job of this. They were a big company based in the US. They were called Trunk Club. And Trunk Club, I don't know, you remember Trunk Club was acquired by Nordstrom for a few $100 million. But essentially what it was like, imagine instead of going shopping, it was an online platform where you go in, and it was originally geared towards men who would say, okay, here's my size of shirt and shoes, and here's what I like to wear and my color scheme. And then they would have a virtual stylist, like a person, pick out clothes and put it in a box, the trunk, and they would send it to you every month. And whatever you liked, you kept, and whatever you didn't like, you sent back. Like a personal shopping online service for men. But that's not what they said. They said Trunk Club is a service for men who love to dress well, but they hate to
go shopping.
Go shopping. Now, if you're a man and you love to dress well and you hate to shop, now you're like, what is this? I'm leaning in. Tell me more. That's what it's just that simple. It's the emotional pathways. Like, people love to buy things. They hate talking to salespeople. People love feedback. You know what they hate? Performance reviews. This was my third company that we got acquired by Salesforce. That's what we said. People love feedback and they hate performance reviews. I call this the polarizing love-hate statement. You see all these statements, I say they have love and hate in them. People love feedback. They hate performance reviews. Men love to dress well. They hate to shop. This is emotional pathways. That's it. There's no false promise. I'm just taking my solution and saying, what is it that my customers want? And what is the enemy that's blocking them from getting it? And just throw that into a statement with the words love and hate. I have tons of content on this, and I talk about it in Sell the Way You Buy. And lead with that. That's the simplest way of pitching your product with emotional clarity.
I've been speaking with David Priemer, who is the author of Sell the Way You Buy and his latest book, The Sales Leader They Need. So, David, one last question for you as we wrap up this episode. What would be your number one tip or strategy to help those of us listening sell more?
Yeah, people ask me that. I just go back to Sell the Way You Buy, which is, again, just being like really curious about those emotional pathways. Don't do the thing that you've been doing for years because that's what traditionally people have done. I'm seeing this today with all of my clients. If you fall into that hammock and you keep doing what you've been doing, even though it's not working as much anymore, and it shouldn't be working as much anymore because of all of the different changes in society, then you're going to lose. So always be in that learning mindset. This is what I took away. And we didn't talk about that. I started my career as a research scientist, and then I got into sales by accident at the turn of the dot-com boom. But I never lost the research scientist curiosity. And so I say, that's my number one tip. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. You need to adapt your motion based on science and the way people actually buy, but then also harmonizing that with what's happening in your particular market, which is, if it's like other markets, changing every month, every week, every year.
And that was my talk with David Priemer. If you'd like to pick up a copy of his book, Sell the Way That You Buy, or his latest book, The Sales Leader They Need, you can find both of them on Amazon and everywhere that books are sold. Of course, you can pick up an audio copy and listen to it, but I found that the written copy and then being able to highlight the really amazing points was best for me. Now, if you'd like to learn more about David, you can also find out about his organization, his company, over at cerebralselling.com. And he is very, very active over on LinkedIn. Make sure that you connect with David. Now, while you're over on LinkedIn, feel free to give me a look up as well. My name is Mark Drager. My details are in the episode show notes, and I would love to connect with you over there. Now, one last thing. If you're still listening to my voice, if you made it this far into the show, you really should subscribe. And here's why. Because each and every week, I work to share these actionable strategies, actionable tips, great advice, and fresh new ideas, just like what David shared with us today, to help you grow your business and to grow sales. So with that, I want to thank you so much for listening. We are going to wrap up this episode. I am Mark Drager, and I will catch you in the next one.